this. What is the cable? The Ethernet cable. I forget, we have to turn on USB streaming first?
Yes. Oh, shit.
What?
I already put it all in anyways. So it doesn't matter.
Is there a longer cable that we can use for this? To connect the camera to... So, good morning everyone, and welcome to our Amoroso deep dive. Today we're going to take a look at a dance that has been very popular in Renaissance social dance circles, and I can't believe I just used those words in conjunction with each other. Renaissance social dance circles for about the last 25 years, 26 years. And that's because at its heart, it seems like it's a simple dance. And certainly there are ways to dance it in a simple manner. But when one starts looking more closely at the music, and then more closely, and I mean the original music in the manuscript, and then more closely at the original manuscripts in the original Italian, one starts discovering little intricacies that could pose challenges for a reconstructor, but can also make the dance much more interesting than the sort of basic beast that's been passed around like some kind of folk tradition for the past 26 years. So that's what today is about. Let's dive right in. So part of dance is its context, and so I would like today to actually work in some of the context in which these dances were enjoyed. They weren't just danced randomly on the sidewalk, for instance. They were part of a greater panoply of festivities, of social occasions, of celebrations. So we're going to open today with a reading from one such occasion, and what you're going to notice is that there isn't a lot of focus on describing the dances themselves. The most important thing was what everyone was wearing. So let's open with this took place in Florence in 1459, and this was in celebration of the feast of St. John, which San Giovanni, which in Florence, that's their patron saint. The patron saint of Florence is San Giovanni. So the feast of John the Baptist, very important. Days of festivities. Everyone participated from all social levels. Basically, no work got done as far as I can tell, except for the work of feeding people and making sure, I suppose, that no one fell off of bleachers that were erected for the balls. Okay, so here we go. Sunday featured the joust. Monday, the dance, and on the following day, the hunt. Tuesday's evening featured the weapons show. The day finally arrived to make arrangements for the dance festivity in their Mercato Nuovo, so they're dancing in the new marketplace, so outdoors. The Feast of St. John is in August, so entirely possible. There was a raised platform, and above the area was a covering of cloth. The floor of the area was covered with carpets, and all of the seats had very high backs and were regal. I can guarantee you there were only a certain class of people sitting in those seats. There was a location for seating the women who did not dance because of age or weight, or because they were widowed. Facing the noblemen's seating, and on top of a high platform were the pifferi, the pipers, and trombone players. Such splendor was never seen before that day. 60 youths dressed up for the beautiful dance, and 40 of them wore clothing decorated with brocade. Very expensive. and there were more than 50 garments decorated with silver embroidery. These costumed youths changed their costumes once, twice, or 3 times during the festive day. All of their leggings were designed with pearls and embroidered with silver. Finally, I saw the pifferi and the players of twisted horns march to their places. 20 trombetti were on the platform above the entrance. When the women gathered at the entrance, the musicians sounded noble fanfares to herald them in. Young men met the ladies with elegant and ornamented reverenza. So you can see these dance festivities were actually very highly structured and choreographed even before anyone set a foot on the dance floor. And they actually constructed entire bleachers surrounding the entire piazza, the entire square. And they were actually elevated and raised, graduated, just the way you might imagine modern bleachers are, or perhaps bleachers in the Colosseo in Rome. And you had this high platform above where all the musicians were located. So that meant there was no room lost on the dance floor for musicians. It was just dancers performing without anyone being distracted by those lowly musicians up there in the bleachers. So that is the context in which dances like this were enjoyed. You might have noticed, interesting note for those of us who do living history, that the costumed youths changed their clothing, excuse me, once, twice, or even 3 times in a day. And I know that I have occasionally been guilty of such vanity myself. I see certain people looking at each other knowingly. So, let us talk about Amoroso now. Amoroso is referred to as a ballo francese, a French dance. And there's a version for 2 that actually fits to the music in some manner. There's a version for 3 that doesn't seem to fit to the music that has been handed down at all. And then there's another version of Amoroso called Amoroso Iscardo that doesn't fit to the music for Amoroso and isn't delivered with any music at all. And then, curiously, there's a version of Amoroso presented in a German letter dated 1517, so 70 years after the earliest version, that describes the dance as jotted down, shall we say, by a Nuremberg merchant who was doing business in Florence. And he writes back to his sister to satisfy her curiosity about the kinds of dances that were being done in Italy. And so he actually writes down a version of Amoroso that either reflects quite a few changes to the original dance or reflects his lack of knowledge of the dance itself. Could go either way. But it's written in this charming early 16th century German, and he Germanifies the Italian terms. It's really cute. If we have time, we'll look at that at the end. Well, maybe during one of our breaks, I'll read out his fascinating Germanized Italian. So Amoroso for 2 in Due has 2 versions. There's the earlier version, and it's presented in Guglielmo da Pesaro's work on the practice and art of dancing. He was a Jewish dance master, and he eventually converted because he wanted his career to go somewhere. So he became a Christian, and then he took the name Giovanni Ambrosio. And there's some theories that his last name was always Ambrosio all along, but in that time, Jews were generally not acknowledged by their actual surnames until they converted in Italy, in various city-states of Italy. So, yay, anti-Semitism for the win. So Giovanni Ambrosio, Guglielmo da Pesaro as was, presents a version of this in the earliest copy of his work, dated to the early 1460s, so like 1463. And it's this gorgeous hand calligraphed, illuminated piece of dance history. It's really beautiful, and it's very easy to read. The letters are perfectly clear. It's in this beautiful new Roman style, so it's not the Gothic style that runs into each other. Each letter clearly spaced, all words beautiful. Abbreviations are very obvious if you can speak Italian. And he also provides music. But I was talking with my musicians about this music and the original music, and the general consensus is that the scribe was either illiterate, and couldn't actually read music, so he was just copying a picture as far as he was concerned, and so it was inaccurate. Or the scribe was deep into his cups by the time he started copying the music for Amoroso. So the music has some spots where the notes don't actually add up. And that leaves the music itself open for interpretation as to how long each of the phrases is, how the phrases actually sound, whether there's a quarter note there or a half note or a whole note, which means that over the decades, various historic musicians have looked at this music and come up with different interpretations based on whether they're looking at the original source for the dance, whether they're just looking at the music, or whether they're just looking at the music as a, I want to play a pretty tune perspective. So I finally went back and looked at the original music again and worked with Gaida, Chris Elms from Gaida, and Albert Coffrin from Estampita, and we decided that actually, especially if you want to make the music fit the dance with which the music actually was published, then you actually have to interpret certain things differently, and so we've re-recorded the music with the extra notes in the places they need to be to perfectly fit the earliest version of the dance. So we're first going to look at this earliest version of the dance. It's my favorite one because it's the more interesting of the two. So let's go ahead and get up and actually start dancing and learning, working our way through this new version of Amoroso, this new oldest version of Amoroso, I guess is the fairest way to describe it. So I'm going to go ahead and put on our music and we're going to do a volume check. We live in the age of Zoom and this is what we have to which we've been relegated. And I'm going to ask my beloved husband to come and join me to make the space seem less empty. Going to start by warming up at the same time as we are actually learning and working through the steps. Okay, so sound check. Is that, can you still hear me or is it too loud? Good, excellent. Okay, so let's rewind. So we're just going to start by walking, just walking. Step, 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 step. Step on the balls of your feet. Step, 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 step. Come back to flat. Remember that the foot of our feet do not actually touch the ground. Remember flat. Now pretend you're stepping over a pile of unpleasantness. What? Make sure you put them up on your feet and lower yourselves. Okay, I just realized there is something open that will continue to make noise annoyingly if I don't close it. Okay,
And
so let's.
so you know, the sound isn't perfect as usual. When you turn away, it's harder to hear you. So
It shouldn't be because I'm on the lapel mic. Oh wait, haha. That's because the lapel mic's not actually on.
there you go.
My love, could you plug me in again? Well, so that's interesting. That was just the microphone from God knows what picking me up. Okay, so can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, so now the lapel mic is actually on. Right, okay, so let's talk about our doubles, our dopey. So Amoroso is, it can be danced, some people like to dance it as a crazy fast Piva dance. Some people like to dance it as an extremely slow dirge. I feel it should be slow, but not dirge-like, so it should be somewhere in the middle between those two. So still elegant, nothing bouncy, but also should not feel like you're processing towards someone's grave. So, dopey doubles at this speed are basically synonymous with Piva in this dance. So anytime this dance, especially in the early version, it interchangeably uses the word Piva and doppio, which really just underscores the idea that a Piva is nothing but a doppio altered and accelerated by the music that stimulates the dancer to it. So this music is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so each double, each doppio, each 3 steps and a pause at that tempo would look like this. If my weight is on my right foot and my left foot is free, step, 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 pause. And I intentionally leave that 4th foot, that 4th step behind me, right? Okay. And then the next one would then lead with that foot that got left behind, right, left, right. And especially to emphasize the floating quality of this very elegant music, we really want to do the up, up, flat motion. So let's try that somewhat slowly. Let's put our weight on our right foot and our left foot is free. And I'll count 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, 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 pause, step, 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 pause, up, up, flat, pause, 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 up, flat, pause. And to prevent yourself from getting dizzy, do try to square off your space. Try not to fall into the dancing around a well of gravity doom. So try to kind of make clean corners just in an effort to minimize dizziness. 3, 1, 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that to the music, and go ahead and we're going to do 8 of them. 8 of them. Still no partner yet. Let's just work on getting that footwork nice and pretty. And okay, so I'm going to play the music again, and this time I'm going to watch you and see if there's any little tidbits on which we can improve. So places for 8 I call those floating piva. In the original, they're not called floating piva, but I feel like I need to emphasize they're not bouncy quality, and floating seems to do it. Brief intro. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about, this was a question that Decimus actually asked. So what can we do with those when we have a sequence of Piva or Dopey or Saltarelli, and it's just us and our partner, what can we do? And so I'm going to ask my partner to come back. I don't know what he's doing, but he just sometimes a clash. Beloved? So there are figures you can actually lead during these opening sequences of Dopey. And you're going to notice that basically all 15th century dance is variations on singles and variations on doubles, in essence. So when we are dancing with a partner, even if it's a choreography, I want to emphasize that it's important that you have this connection. It's an elastically firm connection. So I'm not spaghetti armed, but I'm also not rigid as though dead in the grave for 3 days. Right? So I think that's actually a term that's used in one of the manuals at some place to describe how stiff you should not be. So there should be a connection here in your hands, and it shouldn't be so tight that my fingers are going numb, so not that tight, my love. But there should definitely be a connection. And this is because even we both know the dance hypothetically, but if one of us forgets, then that connection allows the other person to keep going, right? We're not into figures yet. We're just how if one of us forgets, the other can just sort of be gently guided along until they remember what exactly is happening. So first step is connection. So let's just take a moment to do a connection exercise. Place yourself in the center of your space, more or less. And for now, let's go ahead and we'll have, I don't care who leads or follows in this, I'm going to have both of you do this exercise from the leader and follower perspective. Whoever is on the left is the leader, whoever is on the right is the follower. So I want you to establish that elastic connection. And leaders, I would like you to guide your partner. I just want you to provide gentle impulse to the right. And followers, you should feel that, and you should then want to move to the right. And now, leaders, I would like you to provide gentle impulse. You're going to gently lead to the left, and you're just going to move to your left, leaders, and your followers should just come with you because we're connected, right? There's no pulling, there's no pushing. It's all about that connection and just moving in a direction, and because we're connected, that movement transmits through our arms, and the follower naturally goes. Okay, so and leaders, I would like you, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I want you, we're just going to work on sideways. I want you to gently push or gently give impetus either sideways right or sideways left. And follower, I just want you to respond to that. Okay, ready? And just go at your own walking pace, no music. Just gently move. Doesn't matter what footwork you use. Just sideways.
Oh, I got your string.
You did this, okay. Okay, so let us switch. Leader becomes the follower, follower becomes the leader. And remember, in these dances, left is what defines leader 99% of the time. Okay, so same exercise, but new leader, new follower. Now, my beloved condottiero is generally terrible at following, but he's getting better. So, leader, ready? Go ahead and give your impetus. Moving left or right. There's too much to give here. This should not happen. Your hand, the follower, your hand should not move in front of your body in any way. Your hand should stay between you. That's what creates that elastic connection. Go ahead and try leading some forward. Try maybe leading other figures, like figure eights. Okay, so this kind of connection, we want to make sure we have that at all times when we're actually connected. No spaghetti arms, but we want to have this elastically firm connection. Okay, so now let's talk about basic figures that we can do with those opening piva in this dance. So, and again, this is all going to be determined by the person who's on the left, by our leader. So of course the basic figure, question.
Yeah, can we just ask you about the hands and how you two are holding hands? I know there's different.
So, I'm the leader now. So I've got my hand as the leader, like this. That's my right hand.
Yep.
So basically I'm just holding it like that. And then the follower just sort of slots their hand down over top of it, like this.
You're going to try and avoid grabbing them with their thumb.
Yeah, you definitely. So whether the follower or the leader, don't close your thumb like this and dig in. That hurts. So try to keep your thumb sort of just completely relaxed. Your thumb doesn't actually do anything. Your thumb is a useless digit in this particular endeavor. It does come, you can rest it gently, but the tendency is, especially if we forget what we're doing, to start pressing down, and then things start hurting. But yeah, so basically everything is, for the leader, everything is being led by this right hand, just the fingers and the palm. And for the follower, you're just being guided by your four fingers and your palm, and thumbs are kind of vestigial digits in this equation. Did that answer? Excellent. Good question. Thank you. So, the basic main figure is progressing around the space. Let's go ahead and do those 8 floating piva with music. And leader, I would like you to actually guide your follower around your space and maybe try leading, instead of going around, just around and around, actually try leading some figure 8s around your space. Okay. Music.
We have it in the best.
Yes, we do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so let's switch that. Follower become the leader, leader become the follower. Same idea. I would like you to lead your partner around the space and maybe try adding some figure 8, some differential to just going around. Right, so just so you know, this is actually, all of these kind of leading following figures can be built into the greater improvised saltarello or improvised piva. And I will be offering a workshop on that when we can get more couples in each other's spaces. So other figures that are common that can be led during these opening 8 or 12 or 16, however many piva there happen to be at the beginning of a dance, is a very common figure that crops up in a lot of choreographies, and that is taking same hands and circling. So just in terms of pure figure, what I mean is we face each other, we take, in this case, right in right, like we're shaking hands, like, you know, closing a good Florentine wool merchant business deal, you know. Yes, I accept your term, sir. 20 florins it is. So now we're going to circle, we'll say 4 piva, all the way around in this clockwise direction. So go ahead and take right hands and let's try circling 4 of those nice floating piva in this direction. Ready, and 1 da da, 2 da da, 3 da da, 4, and then commonly that last step of that last floating piva is a mezzovolta, and we swing around to take left hands, left and left, like this. And then we circle 4 piva back, more or less to where we started, but it doesn't really matter if you get to the exact same spot. So let's now try circling 4 piva in this counterclockwise direction. Ready, and da da da, da da da, da da da, da da da. So let's practice that figure with don't worry about leading and following yet. We'll get to how to lead and follow this figure. Let's just practice that figure, knowing that we're going to do this figure. So 4 piva in a clockwise rotation, 4 floating piva back to place. So weight is in our right foot, left foot is free, ready, and 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, switch, 2, 3, right, 2, 3, left, 2, 3, right, 2, 3. Just come here a little bit, somehow you're off camera, I don't know why that was getting us off camera, yes. Okay, so the actual leading of this figure. Yes, the actual leading of this figure. When my condottiero is now the leader and I'm the follower. So again, we start out already having our connection. And generally, I usually do at least 1 or 2 piva forward before going into any circling figure. And the impulse comes, he actually causes me to pivot backwards so that we can then take right hands. So let's practice just that motion. going from having inside hands, and the leader just pulls, all they do is the leader just moves with their body, just moves their right hand back, and that causes the follower to automatically pivot. And because your hands should just kind of always be here unless they're doing something else, then my hand is available to just join, right? Okay, so, yes?
I don't have to grab her hand to do it?
Nope.
Like, even with my hand open, completely open, it
Yeah, because I'm making sure that we maintain this connection unless I'm given other instructions, him just rotating just the tiniest bit, and then I'm ready, I move. So followers should always think of themselves as perpetual motion machines, that they are always moving in a direction until they get an impulse change, instructions to change their impulse into a different direction. Right? That's how followers, that's the mindset of a follower, is that I'm going to go this way until I'm run into something or my leader gives me instructions, physical instructions to go a different direction. So let's go ahead and try, leaders. Let's go ahead and put inside hands. No, don't. I'm going to instruct this. Damn it. We're doing this as a group activity. So, okay. So the leader is just going to move their right hand backwards, and the follower rotates around, and now we're right and right. Okay, go ahead and inside hands facing the same direction again. Followers on right, leader on left. This time, let's do that same thing, but, let us come, do two floating Piva, normal, walking forward, into that, shifting into the 4 floating, circling Piva. Okay, so 2 Piva forward, leader leading that, and then the leader leads the shift straight into Piva to circle. And there's no stopping or pausing, you just transfer your momentum and keep going. Right, I'll demonstrate how that will look. That looks like this. Ready, and here's our 1, 2, and it should actually come in the vuoto. I don't know what happened there.
I was counting in my head, it didn't quite work.
No, you can't count in your head.
I know. Get ready, done.
Okay, so we're going to demonstrate again, and my leader will actually do this in the right spot in the music. And yeah. Yes, you can. There's when I add numbers and it goes to hell. Okay, let's go ahead and try that together. No, come on, we don't have time for drinking. There will be a time for drinking, it's not now. Right, okay, so together, figure is 2 floating Piva forward into that circling figure. Ready, and da, 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 da. Other hand, da, 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 da. So when the music is this slow, and it's not really Piva tempo, it's more of a, sort of quaternaria, it actually, there's plenty of time for do your footwork and the steps to just circle with 2 Piva in one direction and 2 Piva in the other direction. Right? And because there's only 8 Piva total, if you try to do a circling figure with 4 in each direction, you're going to run out of music. So let's shrink that down. Let's do 2 Piva forward, and now into our circling figure, right to right, right hand to right hand. 2 Piva in the clockwise direction, pivot, 2 Piva in the counterclockwise direction. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and da 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 da. Oh, now I'm the leader.
How do we do that?
You did that. You led me to become the leader. You needed to pivot, not me.
Oh, you're right.
This is what happens when a government undermines itself and just hands the power away. Okay, so how to get out of the circling? It's not the way he did if you don't want to retain the lead. So let us, just for the sake of argument, take left hands with your partner, left and left, like we've just circled our 2 Piva counterclockwise. So in this case, if the leader wishes to retain his lead, he needs to actually this time make me pivot over my left shoulder. So he needs to use his, what hand is this? His left hand to push forward gently, and then no, the other way, sorry. He needs to pivot forward. Yes, yeah. So to get out of the circling figure, it's the leader who needs to pivot forward. So the leader doesn't have to do anything to the follower, the leader just has to pivot. The follower will keep going the direction they're going, which is as it should be. Right, so it's all about the leader pivoting to get out of the circling figure. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and try just the circling figure. So take right hands with your partner, right and right. So we're going to be focusing on getting out of the circling figure. And for that, all the leaders have to do is pivot forward over their left shoulder. Yes. Okay, so 2 Piva in the clockwise direction. Ready, and da, 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 pivot, da, 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 pivot for leaders. Followers just keep facing the way they are. And now we're back to where we need to be. Okay, let's try that whole figure, 2 Piva to lead into our circling figure. Then switch into circles, right hand clockwise, switch left hands counterclockwise. At the end of that, leader uses the last step of that last Piva to pivot and end up to the left. Okay, so weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and da, 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 da. Right hands, da, 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 da. Left hands, da, 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 pivot. Yes. Well, no, you should be forward with your left foot. Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and try this with music. Go ahead and try with music. And this is basically the number of Piva we've done is 6 total with the lead in. But you as the leader should just try to do this circling figure anywhere you would like within the 8 Piva. I'm not going to tell you when to do it. You need to figure out when you want to do it. But no matter what, be done by the end of the 8 Piva. Right, okay, let's go ahead and try this with music. Piva. Good. Okay, so let's swap now. Let's swap. New leader, new follower. New leader, new follower. We didn't really go through what the follower or we did not review how to lead in depth for the perspective of the follower. But let's go ahead and just give it a try and see if the followers can figure it out, because generally ladies are naturally good at dancing. So let's go ahead and see what happens. Or not. How did that go?
Probably one more practice would be good.
Yes, I thought that might be
was challenging.
not a problem.
It eventually becomes second nature.
Yeah, so remember that leading and following is a skill that you build over time. And this is really the first time I've introduced this concept to most of the people in this workshop. So this is just kind of to wet your toes and your hands in the fine art of leading and following figures. I don't expect it will be perfect by the end of today even.
Well, you shouldn't dance with clammy hands.
Don't dance, okay, don't, metaphorically wet, please, not really wet. Brief intro. So these leader and follower figures are not required. We don't even necessarily know whether they actually did this during these opening segments of processional Piva Saltarelli doubles. We don't know. It's not described. It's sort of assumed that when you have especially 16 opening Piva in a dance, that you're not just going to go around the room around and around and around. You're going to do something with it. So this is conjectural, but based on actual figures that occur in the choreographies. So it's reasonably conjectural, I would just like to emphasize. So as we're now moving on with the dance, do not feel obliged or obligated to lead these leader-follower figures during the opening Piva. I'm just tossing them out there, and we're doing this drill to try to give you something more. This is, after all, a deep dive. Right, okay, so moving on with the dance. The rest of the dance, Amoroso, is in essence a series of runaway, catch up, chase, or flee, follow, and then a grand solo at the end. So let's talk about the 3 sequences that are in the original, the oldest version of Amoroso. So the first sequence for this runaway, this flee, follow figure is single, and I'm going to give you the actual right word is actually, yeah. So this is one of those cases where the oldest manuscript is still trying to figure out what the difference between a double and a Piva is, and there isn't one actually. So the original goes single, do-pi-o, single, or step. So, in terms of musicality, it sings best this way. Step, do-pi-o, step. And of course, I fully expect my cat to, yes, show you his derriere, because why not? So let's go ahead and do that sequence of steps together. So everyone up, place your weight on your right foot, your left foot is free. And we're just going to walk that around the room. Don't worry about lead or follow right now, everyone walking it. Ready, and single, do-pi-o, step. And by the end of that, your weight should be on your right foot, your left foot should still be free. And your left foot should be back here, excitingly anticipating the next sequence someday. Okay, let's go ahead and try that sequence. We're just going to run that sequence back to back for drilling. Okay. Ready, and single, do-pi-o, step. Single, do-pi-o, step. Single, do-pi-o, step. Single, do-pi-o, step. Okay, now, let's do that again, and this time I would like you to try to add some of that nice ornamentation to your steps. So on the sempi, the singles, the steps, that would just be this gentle up, down, up, flat, really. And at the same time, a little bit of shoulder shading. So little left shoulder comes forward when the left foot goes forward. Right shoulder comes slightly forward when the right foot comes forward. And on the double, the shoulder only shades in the one direction. So if your double leads with the left, then the left foot or the left shoulder stays forward. If your double leads with the right, then the right shoulder stays forward. None of this cowboy down Tombstone's Main Avenue sort of weirdness, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and practice that sequence again, sort of back to back as a drill. And I want you to focus on adding a little bit of shoulder shading, gentle, not too dramatic, and the gentle rise through your singles, or the gentle rise and fall through your singles, and the gradual rise and flat through your doppio. So weight is in our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and single, single, doppio, step, 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 single, single, doppio, step, 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 single, single, doppio, step, 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 single, single, doppio, step, step, step. Right. Okay, so, are there questions about that first sequence? Let's go ahead and build that into the dance. Specifically, let's create or transition that into a flee and follow figure. So I'm going to beg my conductor to stop vanishing and start participating in this workshop fully, because some of us, not me, need these footwork drills. You had it last night for the walk. Did you put it on the footwork?
See it.
Welcome to the Contessa's world. So, we've just done, to bring you up to speed to where we are in the dance, let's pretend we just did 8 of those floating piva, during which time you may or may not have led leader-follower figures. No matter what, by the end of the 8 piva, we're now back together. Leaders are on the left, followers are on the right. So, the leader is now going to flee with that first sequence of steps. Now, that being said, we live in times of pandemic and we are dancing in tight spaces. So I'm going to rotate us around so that my left is your left. Instead of fleeing entirely away, because we don't have this beautiful great piazza with endless space, or this beautiful great hall in the Palazzo Medici with endless space, we have our current living spaces. So instead of going straight away, I'm going to have the leaders go around their partner and a little bit away. So it's going to be a sort of curly cue. Geography-wise, that looks like this. Goes in front of the partner, goes around to her right, and then goes a little bit away. So that we're not ending up in corners or doing awkward things with our footwork to try to make it fit in a tight space. So this is the curly cue interpretation of this sequence. Note that in the original manuscript, all it says is that the leaders go away with this sequence and the followers follow. It doesn't say anything about geography. So in my view, this is a perfectly valid interpretation of the geography given our space constraints. Also, if you're dancing in a crowded ballroom, and in this dance that's likely to happen, if you just dance straight away from your partner, you might actually literally lose them in the crowd. So I call this a sort of defensive amoroso, where you keep close to your partner and also prevent other people from stealing them without permission. So leaders, let's go ahead and have you do that first sequence, the single, single, doppio, step, 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 in the curly cue geography. Okay, so leaders, weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and single, single, doppio, step, step, step. And ideally you should end a little bit away. Not next to, a little bit away. A step or two is fine. Okay, then immediately the followers are going to return the favor. So we're going to do what I call the inverse curly cue. So we're going to go in front of our partners, catching up to them a little bit, and then around behind, and end up to the right. So that's our geography. So we start, we have to actually go forward a little bit, and then we curly cue. So, followers, let's put our weight on our right foot and try our inverse curly cue. Same foot sequence. Ready, and single, single, doppio, step, step, step. Right? Nice and sexy. So let's try that as an actual sequence with no pausing between the two halves. So the sequence is going to be follower or leaders, curly cue and away, followers, catch up and curly cue. And there's no pause in between those two sections. Musically, it's going to go like this. Single, single, doppio, step, 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 single, single, doppio, step, step, step. So there is musically what modern ears recognize as a half bar at the end there. So there's no extra music to just sort of lounge and wait. Okay, so weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and single, single, do-re-o. Step, step. Followers, single, single, do-re-o. Step, step, step. Are there questions about that before we build it together with our Piva? Excellent. So now we're going to do our 8 Piva into curly Q chase sequence number 1. 2-1-3. I refer to that section as 2-1-3. Let's try with a slightly different music. Okay. Brief intro. Last one, leaders. Single, 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 step, step. Followers, single, single, step, step, step. Okay, let's try that one more time in this constellation, and then we're going to switch it up, new leader, new follower. Okay. 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Leaders. Single, single, left, step. Followers. Single, step, step. Okay, I lied. I fibbed mildly. We're not going to switch yet. We're going to do it one more time, but this time I'm not going to call anything. Time to start building the memory. So this is the part where we tap into the Contessa's philosophy and ethos of dance, which is fake it till you make it. Right. If you make a mistake, own it, like a boss.
There are no mistakes, just happy flair.
That's right. From the top. I see all of these show-offs continuing on like they know the dance. Right. So, are there questions before we change? Excellent. So, leader becomes the follower, follower becomes the leader. So, new leaders, remember, you start the curly Q chase from the top. Followers. Let's try that again. Exact same thing. Leaders. Single, single, single. Followers. Single, single, single. 3 steps. Okay. Questions before we move on? Right. there being no questions, let us move onward. So, next section of the dance is another chase. And just as with this first flee and follow sequence, the original Italian doesn't talk about geography, it just provides footwork. Now, this is where the dance has been adapted in the past or ignored in the past from this earlier version. In the earlier version, this section very clearly consists of 4 pive. So that means the leader gets 4 pive to flee, and the follower performs 4 pive to follow. In many interpretations, you will see that people cut this section short because this is one of the spots where the music gets hinky. So I've had my musicians reinterpret it, and we've actually added the full bar, so we can actually do the full 4 bars, the full 4 pive in this flee and follow sequence. So let's go ahead and have the leaders position themselves to the left of their partner, to the left of the follower is on the right. And we're going to do, because we're still dancing in this constrained space, we're going to stick to our curly cue. Again, if you have a long, grand space and it's not a crowded floor, then I encourage you to actually dance straight away and really ham it out, I suppose. But in our constrained space and or on a crowded floor, the curly cue is really a great technique. So, handsome husband. So, 4 pive is the sequence, geography is the same. Leaders, ready, and piva, 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 piva. Good. Now, the followers will do the same geography as they did before. 4 piva. Weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. Ready, followers. Da da da, da da da, da da da, da da da. Okay, let's go ahead and try that back to back with no pauses in between. So leaders will do their 4 piva flee, followers will do their 4 piva follow. Everyone, weight on your right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and da da da, da da da, da da da, da da. Followers, da da da, da da da, da da da, da da da. Okay, very nice. Okay, let us swap places so that the leader is now the follower is now the leader. Okay, so weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. New leader starts the figure. Ready, and piva, 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 piva. Follower, piva, 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 piva. Okay, very nice. Questions about the 4 piva flee and follow? Okay, let's try that one more time with our leader and the ladies leading, the men following, if you have that constellation in your dance space. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Remember, leader is the person who's on the left. Ready, and piva, 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 piva. Okay, very nice. So let's go ahead and build that onto the first chase. So we're not going to go all the way back yet. We're just going to practice the transition from our first flee and follow figure into the second flee and follow figure. So let's recap. Take a moment. Think about the first flee and follow figure. What was the footwork? Say it to yourself. I don't need to hear you. Okay? And then what is the footwork for the second flee and follow figure? Right. Okay, so first flee and follow figure, single, single, doppio, step, step, step. Second flee and follow figure, piva, 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 piva. So, orient yourself. It doesn't really matter to me at this point who is the leader, who is the follower, but know if you're on the left, you are the leader. Okay, so first flee and follow figure, both sides, then second flee and follow figure, both sides. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and single, single, doppio, step, step, Followers, single, single, do-be-o. Step, step, step. Piva, leaders, da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Followers, da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. Okay, let's practice that transition out. Go ahead and invert yourselves, reposition yourselves in the room. So that the leader is now the follower is now the leader. So we have a new leader, new follower to practice just that exact same figure, the two flee and follow figures. First one, weight is in our right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and single, single, do-be-o. Step, step, step. Followers, single, single, do-be-o. Step, step, step. Piva leaders, da, 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 da. Followers, da, 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 da. Okay, very nice. Let's go ahead and put that together now with the music, with our opening 8 Piva. Are there questions before we do so? No? Okay, so whoever's on the left, you are the leader. I'm not particularly bothered about who actually leads first or who follows first here. Wait, no, bad music. I didn't say go. Wow, impetuous musicians. Okay, brief intro. Piva. Leader, single, single, go. Step, step. Followers, single, single, go. Step, step, step. Leaders, for Piva. 1, 3, 4, followers. 2, 3, 4, Okay, let's try that again. Try that again. Same thing, same leader, same follower, just the exact same thing. Assume the position. Brief intro. Go. Step, step. Go. Step, step. Followers for Piva. Followers.
Example of flare.
Okay, let's try that one more time before we swap the lead and the follow. This time, I'm not going to call. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's funny. I've spent 25 years doing this to the shortened music that I still have to mentally tell myself 1, 2, 3, 4 for that last bar. Otherwise, I get stuck in the short bar. Yeah. I've been dancing this dance for 26 years to one other kind of music, and I will get there. I will accomplish it. Right. So, let's go ahead and swap leader and follower. New follower, new leader. Piva leaders. Questions? I see a lot of hand gesticulation. It's a bit like watching a movie from 1912.
I was just messing around with her during the Piva, and it left her confused.
No,
Unsurprisingly.
that
Terrible
Decimus, no
lead. I have a
biscuit.
terrible lead.
Bad Decimus, no biscuit.
He's
Go ahead.
He just led me to do something, but it wasn't what he wanted me to do.
Sure.
Everything's your fault.
Okay, let's go ahead and dance it again with the same leader-follower constellation as we just did. Okay, brief intro. Leaders. Followers. Leaders for DJ. Yay, we both did the whole bar that time. Okay, so are there questions? Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to let you take a brief drink break, and I'm going to provide some more context, and then we're going to move on to the grand solos. So just hang out while I read, while you have a reading by the Contessa. So, continuing with the same festival of San Giovanni il Baptisto, St. John the Baptist. So, for the important rulers and great champions, the trombetti gladly sounded their horns in a glorious manner. And when the count, because there was a count, the Galeazzo Sforza was visiting, and when the count passed by, women arose and performed a reverenza to him by curtsying, almost touching the ground. The nobleman, worthy to be a king, no ass kissing here, responded by making a reverenza with his cap in hand. Aha! So here is an interesting little tidbit that we will never get from a choreography, but we do get from a chronicle, that when a gentleman made a reverenza to a lady, perhaps he should always remove his cap if he is a fine gentleman. So this is actually the earliest proof I have of that as a custom, as a practice. So this is 1459. Doesn't mean it didn't happen earlier, I just haven't found it yet. But yeah, so the count, even though he outranked all of those, stupid bourgeois Florentine girls, he still returned the reverenza and doffed his cap to them. So that's a lovely little thing. It seemed like a paradise with angels. Then the pifferi and the trombone players began to play a saltarello, artistically and artfully constructed. Then every squire who was graceful and slender, I guess if you're not, you didn't get to dance, chose his wife or a maiden and began dancing, doing one thing or another. They might promenade around, saltella, hopping, change hands, exit, have new partners, or perform a beautiful dance of 2 or 3 parts. So this is a description of the saltarello as an improvised dance form, as implied by that doing one thing or another, going around, changing partners, changing hands. So this is how we know that the saltarello is an improvised dance form. because everyone was dancing at once, but no one was doing the same thing. Two young women who were blessed with beautiful faces, which radiated with joy, went over to invite the gentle count to dance with them. They made an inchino to the ground. They inclined themselves to the ground. And they made a very ornate and excited reverenza. The young military leader stood up and returned an inchino to them. So he, again, this idea that they do a reverenza, he responds. So again, we've got these instructions on how to invite someone to dance. That's never ever mentioned in the choreographies, but it is mentioned in the chronicles. So this is how I know that ladies asked men to dance, and not just any man, but Count Galeazzo Sforza. The Sforza, the Sforza were the dukes of Milan. Galeazzo was the duke's son at this point. So very, very powerful condottiere. And even though he was so powerful and obviously outranked anyone in Florence by a mile, still these two ladies went and asked him to dance, these two young women. And they did a reverenza to him, and he returned the honor. So, after making the inchino to them, he took his place between them and danced without making a mistake. What he danced, it says here shortly, actually. While the count danced with the young women, men and women stood up and bowed every time the three dancers passed by. So this is an interesting note on if you have a presence in your hall, a guest of honor, and they are out there dancing on their own, then, or even at all, then every time they pass by where you are seated, you should not sit there like lumps. You should rise and honor them as they dance past. They danced the dance called Pellegrina, which we learned last weekend. And the ladies then escorted him back to his place. So here's another important note about customs and courtesies in 15th century. The ladies invited him to dance, and then when the dancing was done, they returned him to his place. They did not simply dump him in the middle of the floor and go off on their merry way, as I often see happen in many Renaissance social dance situations. So, I shall admonish you, my dancers, should you invite someone to dance, please do return them to the place from which you found them, and do not abandon them like detritus after having used them for a dance. Right, okay, so we'll continue with this festivity. The description of this ball has so many great little tidbits to really help us dive into the whole dance, not just the choreography. I really love this description here. Are there any questions or comments about the readings, the scripture from today's lecture?
I was just curious what you thought about, like Florence is a republic at that point.
Yes, it
And
is.
whether the Count was acting to sort of acknowledge the Republican nature by making bows that he might not have made to, not in another context, right? Because Florence doesn't have a duke or
Right.
really an aristocracy of any sort. So those ladies sort of, in that context, he's honoring them as if they were great ladies.
Indeed, so that's a very interesting question. And it could be that in his way he is treating them as emblems of the Republic of Florence and thereby showing them equal courtesy. Perhaps that could be true and might be part of the reason, but I still feel like the Dukes of Sforza were real Renaissance men. They just were. They promoted the arts. Yes, they were great military leaders, they were great warriors, absolutely. And if you looked like the first Duke of Milan, you would also wish you were a great warrior, because he was not a good-looking man. But I think it also is just a question of courtesy and showing oneself to be an elegant, refined, and noble prince, and not just a brute who murders babies in the streets, you know. So your point, absolutely, I agree 100% that is part of it. Good question. Yay, thank you. So, any other questions from my distant learners who have not actually joined and will be watching this recording?
Do you have any thoughts on doffing of caps and how you would do that?
Yes,
If we are
and
gonna
that's
do
why my
it?
beloved
If
husband
you're
was
my
desperately,
teachers and stuff.
desperately seeking his cap. I'm positive that it would have been with the right hand.
Okay.
I'm absolutely positive. Left-handedness was not allowed at this time. It was It was generally massaged out of children at a young age.
Right. And I
So-
think the Elizabethans are doing this, have rules around how you doff your cap and stuff, like 100 years
So
ago.
this is, I've never actually seen any specific description. That I found a mention at all of the doffing of the cap makes me giddy with joy. So I really think it depends on the hat, because in this period, we're talking 1459, there's a wide range of caps that gentlemen are wearing, right? You've got some very bulky, very awkward ones, you've got slightly smaller ones, you've got the chaperones with, all the pieces. So I think I suspect it's something they would have practiced with each of their caps before ever setting foot on a dance floor. Because the last thing you want is to humiliate yourself with an ungraceful dropping of the hat while trying to honor your partner.
Also, how do you get that chaperone just right again afterwards? That's not.
Well, so chaperones at this period, I'm pretty certain, were not just purely rolled up hoods. They were hoods that had been rolled and stuffed and fixed into place. So it's a piece, right? You lift it, it all comes up together. You put it back, it's all together. It's, in the earlier, probably the end of the 14th century, early 15th century, someone just took their cowl and rolled up the hood and stuck it on their head. But by 1459, they've petrified into a hat, basically. So and actually because of the stuffing, it makes it really easy because it's got all this great tension. You lift and it comes up like a nice piece, which probably should also tell you how much you need to stuff that baby to make it nice and firm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something that every good gentleman should practice in the privacy of his own home, maybe in front of a mirror, to see what the best way to doff and replace a cap is, and do it for all the hats he may ever wear while dancing. Good questions.
That could take a while.
Yeah. Well, you could, or if one is lazing about in a most idle fashion, being entertained by whatever poor players happen to be before you, perhaps you can practice some doffing and replacing at that point. Excellent. Well, are we ready to move on to the grand finale? Splendid. Back onto the field. Back onto the field. Wow, I wonder if that was a Freudian slip. Onto the field. Yes, onto the field of battle. So the grand solo has different footwork. So we have a third pattern that we have to learn. So the third pattern for the oldest version of this dance, the first half of the pattern is single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio, turn. That's the pattern I want you to say. Let's go ahead and say that together. Say that together. Ready? And single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio, turn. So what that means is 2 singles in a doppio, 2 singles in a doppio, and the last step of the last doppio is a mezzovolta. So I will demonstrate that from this direction. So weight is on my right foot, left foot is free. Looks like this. Single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio, turn. And for those who have not been faithfully replicating participating in my footwork drills class, let's talk briefly about a mezzovolta, that half turn. It's the first time we've had to actually do one really in this dance. So a mezzovolta literally means half turn. Literally means half turn, and it can describe any turn that is less than 360 degrees in these dances. So when we turn, so we step onto our right foot, for instance, when we are going to do a half turn and we know it's coming, we gather the non-stepping foot so that our ankle bones are very close together, all angles, right? And then we pivot in that gathered fashion. So let's just take a moment to practice this step, gather, pivot. So put your weight on your right foot for now, your left foot is free. We'll do it in 4 counts, nice and slowly, 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, gather, pivot, pause. And at the end of that, this is how my feet look from the front. My weight is completely on the foot that stepped, i.e. the foot that pivoted. My weight is not at all on the foot that gathered. If you need to, you can certainly rest the toes of the gathering foot for balance, but do not close your feet. Do not close your feet. Okay. So let's go ahead and try that step, gather, pivot, and my beloved husband's going to drill this also because he needs to start drilling this. I do. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free, nice and slowly, 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, gather, pivot, pause. So, weight is on our left foot, our right foot is free. Let's try that same exercise from the right foot. 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, gather, pivot, pause. Okay, now, just as a little drill, let's drill that back to back. Okay, same figure, no pausing, no counting in between. So to start, weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, gather, pivot, pause. Step, gather, pivot, pause. Step, gather, pivot, pause. Step, gather, pivot, pause. Last one, or last one because I want the right foot. This is the last one. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I feel the need for symmetry. Let's do equal left, equal right. So let's do that with less gap between that. And let's actually build it onto the end of a double, end of our doppio. So let's just practice that Mezzovolta on the end of a double left. So weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, step, gather, pivot. Okay, weight should be on your left foot, your right foot should be free. Let's try it on the end of a double from here. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, step, gather, pivot. Okay, so now let's build that onto a double that's in the actual tempo of the music. So weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. I'll demonstrate how this will look because it's much faster, obviously. So the music goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So count 3 becomes your step, gather, pivot. So I'll count 4 in the actual tempo of the music. Ready? 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, step, step. Okay, so weight is on our left foot, right foot is free. 4 for nothing. 4, 3, 2, 1. Step, step, gather, pivot. So let's make this a little easier. We'll actually do singles, single, single, double, single, single, double. The last step of the last double is the Mezzovolta, is the half turn. So weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. I just realized this chair is perhaps blocking the view sometimes, so I can come over here. So weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Recap, 2 singles and a double, 2 singles and a double, pivot. 4, 3, 2, 1. Single, single, doppio. Single, single, doppio, turn. Yeah, and we're going to actually start doing this on a diagonal so we have more space. Okay, let's go ahead and drill that again. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and single, single, doppio. Single, single, doppio, turn. Okay, so let's just drill that back to back. Thankfully, there's a half turn built into it, so you can literally just ping pong back and forth in your space. Oh, question. Or is there a question? No? Oh, we're just clearing more space. Okay, so weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and single, single, doppio. Single, single, doppio, turn. 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 Last time, da 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 Are there questions about that sequence? So in the actual solo, you only do that once, not back to back to back to back, unless I guess you get completely lost in the dance. So that's the sequence that the soloist, and each of us will get a grand solo now, the soloist performs to either flee or to follow, depending on whether you're the leader or the follower. So the next half, after we do that mezzovolta, the reason I was really harping on the gather, pivot, and not shifting your weight is because we want that left foot free after the 2 singles and a doppio, 2 singles and a doppio, because we're now going to perform a reverenza. So a reverenza, brief recap of what a reverenza is a lunging, an inchino, an inclination to the ground, and then you come up again. And in this dance, we do it with the left foot. And also in this dance, you only get 1 bar of music, which is pretty chipper for a reverenza. Normally you get 2 bars in these sort of faster, the quaternario or the piva tempo, but not here, no. So here, the reverenza gets 2 counts down and 2 counts up. It looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can also think of it as down 2, up 2. Let's go ahead and practice that together. We'll do practice 1 with the left and 1 with the right. So weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and down 2, up 2. Okay, put your weight on your left foot, right foot is free. Let's go ahead and practice it leading with the right foot. Ready, and down 2, up 2. I can tell I hardly ever reverenza from that direction. One more time to give those muscles some more exercise. Ready, and down 2, up 2. Okay, let us now build that reverenza onto the end of our 2 singles and a double. Okay? Let's go ahead and build it on. So everyone drilling right now, we're not doing leader and follower at the moment, just everyone practicing this sequence. So the total sequence thus far is going to be 2 singles and a double, 2 singles and a double pivot, reverenza left. And by the end of the reverenza, you should be erect again, not on the floor in a pile. Okay, so weight is on our right foot, left foot is free. Ready, and single, single, da, 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 turn, rev 2, 3, 4. And that's the timing. So let me sing you the music for this part, just so you hear what's coming. So the music goes da 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 da. And that's it. That's what you get. Let's go ahead and actually let's drill that back to back to back. So 2 singles and a double, 2 singles and a double, mezzovolta reverenza. That again, that again. Let's try to get this nice and smooth. Okay, so which way are we going, brother? Ready, and da 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 da, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, single, single, da da da, single, single, da da, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, single, single, da da da, single, single, da da da. Rev 2, 3, 4, single, single, da da da, single, single, da da da. Rev 2, 3, 4, single, single, da da da, single, single, da da da. Rev 2, 3, 4. Okay, good enough. So, are there questions about that sequence? So in the dance, that is for the leader doing the solo, that's their flee sequence. For the follower, when they're doing the solo, that's the follow sequence. So the second half of the solo, the second half of the solo is actually really simple, but it's very flirty. So the second half of the solo is the 4 piva that we've already done earlier in the dance. But instead of going back to your partner, you're going to make your own circle over your own left shoulder, ending where you are at the moment. So not getting anywhere near your partner, actually. I call this a yes but no figure because you start a little bit going forward towards your partner, but then you turn away. And then you come back, but only to the point from which you began your circle. Question?
Is this figure the same in the original writing? Like, is it a circling?
It's a circle. It actually says it's a circle. And it says nothing about going back. And in fact, the next half, the second half of the solo doesn't work if they go back. So yeah, this is exactly as it is in the original. Leaders during their solo circle over their left shoulder back to the place from which they began.
Okay, great.
Good question, thank you. Okay, so let's just practice circling, creating our own beautiful 4 Piva circle, and it can be large, it doesn't have to be small. 4 Piva at this tempo can cover quite a bit of ground. If you have the space, use it. If you don't, make smaller steps. Point is, wherever you start right now is where you should end your circle. Okay, let's go ahead and practice that. Weight is in our right foot, left foot is free, ready, and da 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 da. So let's put that together with the first half of the solo. And that's the total solo. The whole solo is 2 singles and a doppio, that again, ending in a half turn, reverenza, and then circling over your left shoulder for the leaders. And if we take the original manuscript quite literally, and I think we shall today, only the leaders, only the person performing the solo does the revering. The person who's inactive just allows themselves to be worshipped. So that means only the active soloist performs the reverenza. Okay. So let's go ahead and practice this whole solo footwork together, all the way through to the end of the circle. So weight is on our right foot, left foot is free, ready, and single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, da, 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 da. That's it. Okay, let's try that one more time. Weight is on our right foot, left foot is free, and single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, da, 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 da. Excellent. So, unless you're dancing in a grand hall and have lots of space, space constraints can become an issue. So, you don't have to walk straight away with those 2 singles and a double, 2 singles and a double. You can serpentine it. Serpentine it, yeah. And if you do your serpentining properly, sort of walking this S-ish figure, then you don't have a hard mezzovolta at the end because you can just sort of naturally curve it around to end facing. So that's how this would look, just if you watch the demonstration. Single, single, doppio, single, single, doppio. So for instance, okay, now come back, now I'll demonstrate what I meant, which is much more serpentine. So especially if you have tight space, you were still using all the space we have,
I
right?
did.
Tight space. If you're in a tight space, this is how this would look. Okay, so looks like this. I can cross in front of him with the first one. You know, I can really switch back this. Right? And so we don't end up, we can maintain our distance, we don't end up that far apart, and that's fine. If you don't have the space, don't pretend you have the space. You just don't have the space. So if you need to, in your tight space, then you can serpentine the departure, the fleeing. And on a crowded ballroom, I recommend that because I've been on ballrooms where if I went straight away from my partner, I literally couldn't find them to even make eye contact with them to do a reverenza.
Hopefully we'll get there again.
Yes, hopefully someday we'll need defensive dancing again. Okay, let's go ahead and have the leader practice that. We'll have one leader practice the solo and then we'll swap and have the other leader practice the solo. So leader, maximize your space by serpentining so that you can actually take proper length steps rather than just, dancing into a corner and facing a wall. So, leaders, ready, and single, single, doppio, single, single, do-pio, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, da, 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 da. Okay, so let's talk about what the followers do, or actually, leaders come back. Let's have the followers become the leaders and practice that now relative to another human being. New leaders, scoot a little bit to your right. New leaders, ready, and single, single, do-pio, single, single, do-pio, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, da, 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 da. Now, if you don't end in exactly the same spot that you started your circle, that's fine, as long as you still end up apart from your partner. The whole idea is that you need to be apart from your partner. Okay, good. Leaders who currently are leaders, just stay where you are. Stay where you are. So the followers then get their solo, and this is very much a, oh no you don't, sort of figure. It is also the figure that passes the power in the dance for the second time through. So followers, your footwork is the same. Footwork is the same, geography is more or less the same, except that because the followers are currently facing the leaders, there is no Mezzovolta for the followers. The followers do not perform a Mezzovolta. Only the fleers, not the followers. Mezzovolta at the end of the 2 singles and a do-pio. So ideally, followers, you will end right in front of your leader by the end of your second do-pio to do your reverenza face-to-face with them. Okay, let's go ahead and try that, followers. Ready, and single, single, do-pio, single, single, do-pio, rev 2, 3, 4. Okay, wait, I didn't say what to do next. Okay, so now we're going to have the followers do the circle, their circle with their 4 piva over their left shoulder, and they're going to end to the left of their partner, thereby taking the power. Okay, let's go ahead and have the followers do that. Ready, and piva, 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 piva. Okay, like that, the follower becomes the leader becomes the follower. Yes. Okay, leaders as, let's have everyone go back. Whoever led the last time, you are now the follower. Whoever followed the last time, you are now the leader. So the total sequence is leaders go away with their 2 singles and a double, that again, ending to face, whether that's with the Mezzovolta or not, to you. Just the leaders do a reverenza, just the leaders circle over their left shoulder with the 4 piva. Followers then catch up with the 2 singles and a double, that again, no Mezzovolta, they just end facing. Just the followers do the revering, do the reverenza, and then just the followers circle over their left shoulder and to the left of their partner. Let's go ahead and try that. Leaders, everyone's weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and da 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 do-pio, single, single, do-pio, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, do-pio, 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 followers, single, single, do-pio, single, single, do-pio, followers, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, 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 last piva. Yay, it worked, woo! Okay, so let's just have the current leaders be the current leaders and just run through it one more time with no pauses, to the basic rhythm of the music. Okay, so I think that means that all ladies, as are in this dance, should now be leaders. Okay, so everyone's weight is on the right foot, left foot is free. Leaders, ready, and single, single, do-pio, single, single, do-pio, rev 2, 3, 4, circling, da, 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 followers, single, single, do-pio, single, single, do-pio, Rev 2, 3, 4, circling. Da 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 da. Okay, how did that go? Excellent. Okay, so let us go ahead and dance the whole dance through to that point, or not to that point, all the way through, just all the way through, cleanly. And we're going to dance it twice. Twice. The second time through, of course, we have a new leader and a new follower, and that's why we've been drilling this, everyone doing every part up to this point. Right, let us dive in, I will call it. Meters away. Single, single, up, up, up. Step, step, follower. Step, meters, 3 feet, or 4 feet. 3, step, step, step. Follower. Meters. Facing, Rev 2, 3, 4, Tokyo, 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 Tokyo. Followers. Step, step, Tokyo, facing, Rev 2, 3, 4, Tokyo, 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 Tokyo. Up. New leaders. Single, single, Tokyo. Followers. Single, single, Tokyo. First the leader. Followers. Leaders alone. Rev 4, Tokyo, Tokyo, Tokyo. Just keeps going. Okay, are there questions about that version of the dance? So let us talk about what happens to the dance over the next 15 years. So let's talk about the specific changes. So because our theory is, because the music in the original manuscript was so poorly notated, that version of the music started getting passed around. And that it actually led to the version that appears in the later manuscript being different than the earlier version. Because the version in the later manuscript is actually shorter than this one, because it has half bars at the Piva chase. So instead of 4 Piva, 2 flee and follow, it has 3 Piva and a step. And then on the final solo, there's not enough music at all, and it's very different, actually. So let's go ahead and look at the difference, the specific differences, because the solo is where the big difference is. Big difference. So in the older version, we have the 2 singles and a double, 2 singles and a double with a half turn for the flee figure. In the later version, it actually becomes the exact same footwork as the first fleeing figure in the dance. So that single, single, doppio, step, step, step appears here in the solo. So it becomes a much simpler dance. So, my love? So let's go ahead and try that and see how that feels in terms of the differences between two singles and a double, that again, and just the same sequence we've already done repeated, right? So, yes, you're leading. Okay, so the leader goes away, two singles and a piva, and by that point, by the 1470s, which is where the era of the second version, by that point, piva and dopey have pretty much more or less become very clear. If it's a sort of faster sort of double, it's a piva. If it's a slower sort of double, then it's a doppio, which is the case in this later version. So in there, it just straight up says single, single, piva, step, step, step. So the leader goes away with that. Single, single, piva, step, 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 turn. And then there's music for the turn. Right? Okay. Yes, no, you did it ahead of the music.
I did it.
Yes, so come back. So there's actually music for the Mezzovolta in this version. So it gets half a bar of music, the Mezzovolta. So it looks like this. Single, single, piva, step, 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 turn. Right, so there's actually time for the Mezzovolta. Then in that version, it actually specifies that the lady responds. So everyone does a reverenza. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is where it gets really different. There is no more circling, sexy circling figure. The leader just comes straight back to their original place with 3 piva and a step, because there isn't enough music for 4 piva in this version.
You're gonna break my brain.
Yeah, I know. So 3 piva and a step back. Piva, 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 step. So that's the man's solo. So he goes away and he comes back. For the lady's solo, same footwork. She goes away with 2 singles, a piva, and 3 more steps. Half turn. So single, single, piva, step, 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 turn. Everyone does a reverenza. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is where it gets different. Here's where it gets different. So there is still an exchange of power, but the exchange of power is completely different. So the lady is going to go back and she's going to aim for what was her spot. So to the right of her partner, i.e. they're aiming for right shoulders to be between them. So she goes back with the same footwork with which the leader returned. So that's 2 singles, a piva, and 3 more singles. But the leader is going to actually hand the power over to her. So in the earlier version, she takes the power. In this version, it's passed on. So that's how this looks. So she comes, single, single, piva, or sorry, my brain completely stuttered. My words did not follow what I was thinking. She comes back with the same sequence that he returned with, which was 3 piva and a step. 3 piva and a step. So she starts her piva, she gets 1, 2, and then on the 3rd piva, the gentleman starts doing the same thing she's doing, coming forward with the piva, and then he does a mezzovolta with that final step and puts her on the left. So it's this sort of J figure. So the leader ends up doing, basically he does a J figure, so he leads with the left foot. So he goes left, 2, 3, and step. Putting the lady on the left, and then she's the leader. So let's go ahead, get up, and let's actually try that.
Like what? We have to get up?
Yeah, you actually have to get up.
No.
Let's go ahead and try that solo and see how that feels different. So, leaders are on the left, followers on the right. So to recap, leaders, your footwork is single, single, piva, step, 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 turn. Everyone reverenza. Then the followers come back with 3 piva and the leaders come back with 3 piva and a step, ending to the left of their partner. So they end with a mezzovolta. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. Leaders, ready, and single, single, piva, step, 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 turn, rev, 2, 3, 4, piva, 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 and step. Okay. So now the followers get that exact same footwork, exact same geography. Let's go ahead and have the followers try that. Ready? And single, single, piva, step, 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 turn, rev 2, 3, 4. Now remember, leaders, your job is to share that final piva and single step. For the leaders, it becomes a J figure turning over the right shoulder. So ready? Lead your followers going back, 2 piva solo. Followers, piva, piva, and leaders, piva, and step. And for the leaders, you might have to actually curve your piva out a little bit, make it a rounder J, less of a Gothic J, so that you're actually, go away, and come back. So I'll demonstrate what I mean by a rounder J. So come back with your 3 piva, 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 and step. Make it a little rounder so that you're actually not scrambling on that final single step. Let's go ahead and try that again. The solo's all the way through under the later version. So leaders are going to go away, ready, and single, single, piva, step, 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 turn, rev 2, 3, 4, piva back, piva, piva, and step followers, single, single, piva, single, turn, rev 2, 3, 4, piva, piva, sharing the piva, piva, and step. You need to curve it out more.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, are there questions about that solo? Let's,
Hand up?
No.
Oh, no, that's just.
No. Okay, let's try that again in that orientation. Leaders, ready, and single, single, piva, step, 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 turn, rev 2, 3, 4, piva, 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 and followers, single, single, piva, step, 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 turn, rev 2, 3, 4, piva, 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 and step. And that last step should be on the right foot. Left foot should be free. Okay, so how do we feel about this solo in general? I mean, not necessarily how well you can do it, but what do you think of this solo versus the other solo?
The J is interesting and they're reconnecting, but apart from that, it's just boring because it's a repetition.
Right, yes.
And boring in
that
the
is,
1470s.
I agree wholeheartedly that this is the more boring version. If I am, however, teaching late night dancing, I might be inclined to teach this version because there's less footwork patterns to learn. And it's just, it's literally regurgitating the first 2 sequences, right? No difference at all, yeah. So, but I did want to say that. I wanted to hear whether you, does Karen feel the same way? Does she feel this is the more boring version?
She finds it more confusing, but that's probably because we've practiced Amoroso a bunch of times together before, so the other one is more well known.
So she finds the second solo more confusing.
More confusing, I think, because we just practiced it now, right?
That's fair enough. That's certainly.
It takes her a while to get it into the brain, like most people.
Right, yeah, no, I can totally see that. Yeah, so the reason I think the musicians, the historic musicians with whom I worked on this, Chris Elms, Kate Webb, and Albert Coffrin, and we sort of all agree that it really seems like this version evolved because the music was recorded in a crappy fashion in the earlier manuscript.
Does this version work to the same music that we're using?
So I would like to talk about how you can make it work. You can make it work. You can make both. You can make it work either way. And if you're dancing in a social combat situation, the music, until we get this this reinterpretation more out there, you're more likely to encounter the shorter music. So that means you just don't get to do all your footwork. That's it. So if you're doing the older version, the longer dance choreography to the shorter music, then you basically lose your the 4 piva become 3 piva and a step in the first part of the dance, and possibly in the second part. Or you might just lose the 4th piva entirely, depending on the music. So you have to actually listen to the music.
So I feel like the first time you taught me this dance, you taught it
To the short music.
the short
Yeah.
music, right?
Yeah.
The music that Gaita has recorded
Right, exactly.
and distributed or whatever.
Yes.
The music I have on Spotify.
Yeah, exactly. The ones that they and their version is at the very end in the solo is half a bar shorter than other interpretations.
Hmm.
Which are in turn half a bar shorter than what is actually needed for the full 4 piva at the end. So basically, there's a couple of solutions. You can either have people's footwork overlapping. So as the soloist is finishing up their 4 piva, the follower is just coming forward. They share the piva and the first 2 singles. I mean, that's an option. I kind of prefer that the soloist, though, just stops and cuts themselves off. So let's go ahead and actually, as an exercise, it's not going to be necessarily fun for Karen, but let's go ahead as an exercise, dance this longer version, the older version, to the shortened music. And I want you to try to listen for where you don't have enough music. I will tell you where those spots are, but I want you to listen for it. So where you don't have enough music is going to be the second chase sequence. There will not be a full 4th bar, there will be a half bar. So you can only get 3.5 piva in. And there will not be enough music at the end. You will only have enough music for 3 piva on the circle. Okay? Let's go ahead and the way they say combat dancing circumstances. Let us dance to, no, bad musicians. Wait until I say. Oh, very good. Dancers, weight is on your right foot, left foot is free. Okay, I will watch. Ready? Piva. Leaders. Single, single, up, up, up. Followers. Leaders, 3 piva. Oh. Step, step, so you turn. Rev 2, 3, 4. Followers. Wasting. Rev 2, 3, 4. Piva. Movers. Single, single, followers. Leaders. Piva and a step. Followers. 3 piva. Leaders. Rev 2, 3, 4. Followers. Rev 2, 3, 4. So
That's
is
the version I practice with all the time because that's the
Right.
only music I have. So seems easy to me.
I can actually, that's right, I can actually send you send you the music for the new version for now, and someday when it's actually on an album, you can purchase it.
Buy it.
I can make it more different.
So basically, for the nonce, until I really start disseminating the longer music, until Gaida and I start disseminating it, probably the only time you're going to have all the music is when I and Gaida are, or Gaida are involved in the dancing. So it's a combat dancing thing, and I'm thinking about doing a workshop on listening to the music and actually obeying the music and being prepared for uncertainty. Because the reality is that the second you have live music, you have a wild card. Even if it's not intentional. Sometimes they lose track of where they are, especially on the opening number of Piva or Saltarelli, they can lose count. And sometimes if there are repeats in the dance, they can lose count of how many times they've repeated that phrase of music. So a good dancer, I mean, as an experienced, a skilled dancer, will develop the ability to listen to the melody and follow along no matter what the hell happens. So there's exercises that we can do to train that, and I'm thinking on doing that as a workshop. I might call it my chaos dancing workshop or something like that, I don't know.
Well, I think your chunking technique where you've named different bars means that you can pick up, oh, that's the chase sequence number 2 they're playing now. Okay, switch to chase 2 instead of 1.
Right, yeah, and that's why, I mean, so I should specify actually that frequently the sections are not chunked this way, as you actually aptly say, in the original manuscript. So as a reconstructor, I have to look at the dance and give it structure. So you might find other people who break things down differently. Probably less likely in Amaroso though, because there we're following the musical phrasing. So that's pretty clear. But in Bossa Danza especially, they're not chunked. That's something we have to do as interpreters. Well, then let us close our Amoroso workshop with a final reading from our grand festivity. Does that sound like a good way to close us out? Excellent. Because obviously this is recorded and you can repeat and review and practice as much as you like on your own. So let's round this off nicely. So when last we left our festivity in honor of Count Galeazzo Sforza, he had just been escorted back to his place by his 2 delightful lady partners. And they had danced Pellegrina, and all was lovely. But now, a little later, the Count stood up and invited 2 ladies, which made them blush. With dignity, each one honored him, and I am interpreting that to say that they performed a reverenza to him. They placed him in the middle. I like that. They placed him in the middle and danced. Everyone stood up when they passed. Also in such formation between 2 women, Mr. Tiberto and other important gentlemen danced. So the interesting implication there is that there was more than one set on the floor at a time. That's what the Italian really implies. That's a debate in the dance community. At these formal occasions, should it be one set out there or should it be multiple sets? And here it seems to imply that it could be multiple sets, in fact. The chronicler says, "Don't even ask if the hearts were joyous, and if the maidens stared as they were seen giving such great honor. That dancing seemed like paradise, and the dancers from the orders of angels, each one filled with joy and laughter. People of all ages rejoiced at the festivity under the triumph of the lithe arms of the lady, Aphrodite, to whom the shepherd gave the ball." So here, of course, we have one of those fantastical antiquity allusions back to the start of the Trojan War, the judgment of Paris that set the world on fire in the 15th century BC, 13th century BC. The whole scene seemed a heaven of beauty in which the Count represented a sun and the women and youths twinkling stars. Here one enjoyed himself as much as he could ever have wanted under the heat and influence of powerful Cupid. I believe that those magnificent and praiseworthy ladies started burning 1,000 fires without tinder, striking stones or wood. Venus used all of her tricks that day because everyone gallantly celebrated without suspecting anything to be harmful. The implication being that it was. One could dance, entertain, jest, be admired, stare at others. People watching, 15th century activity. Be wooed or do the wooing. It is said that there was such a bombardment of love that a great flame burned in every breast. If in paradise one has pleasure, and one could have paradise on earth, then what I have described to you was paradise. The dancing had lasted an hour, and love had already begun tightening the knots, when arrangements for the refreshments began. So, dance an hour, then you get food. So that has been your Amoroso deep dive.
Excellent.
So thank you so much for joining. How was that?
Yeah, it's great. Do you know anything about the 3-person version?
Yes, I have it right here. So the 3-person version, unfortunately, is only contained in one manuscript, the Siena manuscript. And the Siena manuscript is this gorgeously calligraphed and illuminated manuscript. Again, the writing is super clear, but it's full of errors. It seems to be another case of the scribe not necessarily being literate and also frequently losing his place. So here's the version for 3. First they do 12 tempi of saltarelli, and then they stop. And it doesn't say anything about what orientation of 3. Then the first departs with 2 singles and 2 doubles, going down group. So that actually sort of implies that he's going, instead of forward, he's going this way. But it could also imply that they're in a single file, and he's going down to the back of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the second does the same, and the third does the same. And then the first does a reverenza with a voltatonda, and then the second person, and then the third person. And then the first does a continenza, touching the hand of the one who is to their left, which is kind of interesting because normally the lead is the person on the left. And then the same, and then the second does the same, and then the third does the same. And then they join hands for a voltatonda, which is impossible. So yeah, when I say it's full of errors and not really intelligible, you would, as a reconstructor, I would basically have to create an Amoroso for 3 that is loosely based on this, and then I would really, honestly, you'd have to have music that has that structure.
Yeah, because Saltarelli to Amoroso that would be very stately Saltarelli.
I mean, yeah, or very fast. So it could go either way. So your Saltarelli could be in quaternaria. Steps, or excuse me, 1, 2, 3, hop, 1, 2, 3, hop, 1, 2, right? If you actually did one per bar, right, you could do that. You could do that. It's feasible, it's not impossible. And I should note that of the only piece of music we have for Amoroso that was published with the original older, longer version, but has the lack of music, also has the wrong number of repeats on the Piva section. So it actually is a 3 above the repeat for the Piva section, when very clearly the older version calls for 8 Piva, which would be 2 times through that music. However, if you did 3 times through the music, then you would have enough for 12 of those skittering saltarelli, I guess I would call them. But either way, I would basically have to have music composed that has that 3 repeat structure, right? So that everyone can get to do their thing in turn. So it doesn't fit at all to the original music. And unfortunately, the Siena manuscript, I don't think has any music at all. It's a lot of choreographies, but not music. Yeah, so that's the version for 3. And then the version, if you have time, we can briefly touch on the 1517 version.
Oh, is this the German guy? Yeah.
This is the German version, yeah. So the German version, first off, it's called L'Amorosa, but I mean, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean it's not the same, a version of the same dance. So it says, und hebt sich an mit 8 Bassstufen behend. So that means it starts with 8, he says Bassstufen, Bassa Danza doubles, But honestly, he uses the word bas duple for double in every single dance that he provides, whether or not it's a bassa danza double. So it starts with 8 doubles, and behend, I think that means that, I used to think that meant that they had hands. But then it can't be, because then it says, then the person who's on the right side departs, leaves with 2 bas dupon and a slow one. So he doesn't even say fast, he just says, oh, I see, behend, right, sorry, hasty, fast. So it starts with 8 fast bas dupon, which is maybe how he's calling the piva, right? And then he departs with 2 of these fast bas dupon, these fast doubles, these piva, and a slow one. And then she goes after him in the same way. So there's actually, I mean, it's a little different, same idea, there's still this chase and follow, but the footwork is very different, and there's contrapassi here, and there's reprise here, and he actually Germanifies reverenza to referenz. Yeah, so the big difference is it's still all of this go away, follow, go away solo, and he actually, in this solo, he actually goes away and doesn't come back in this one. So it's more like the original in that regard, which is interesting and might say something about the second version actually not being correct, in fact. I should say that the second version, the later version, the one with the little J figure, is in what's called a library copy of the original manuscript. So it's not calligraphed, it's handwritten in this hideous handwriting. And it's basically a quick and dirty copy that the man who owned it was a fellow Jew, a Jewish gentleman who wanted a copy of the dance manuscript for his library. And
Right.
so, it was a cheap copy, hand done. So
it's
there's a
like my
possibility.
notes after you've taught a class on my blackboard.
Right,
It's
yes.
He just
Yes.
scribbled it down as quickly as he could, as best as he could get it in the time he had.
It's entirely possible. So it's, there's debate about how accurate that manuscript is versus the beautiful presentation copy in the original. So for my taste, for my personal taste, I prefer the earlier version because it's a more interesting dance, I think. But if I'm doing, as I said, if I'm doing late night dancing, I'll kind of err towards that one because it's simpler.
All right.
Well, any other questions before I take a brief break and prepare for the ball?
No, I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. See you in 15 minutes.
We'll see you then. Okay, bye.